Welcome back to Dream It, Build It, Make It, the series where we are talking to the people behind the best customer experiences. I'm Michael Heward, the host and manager of content marketing at Iterable. And today I am very excited. I have not one, but two amazing guests from Barkley. We have the VP of Data-Driven Marketing, Jessica Best, and
Hello.
Partner and author, Jeff Fromm. Thanks so much for joining me.
We're excited to be here. Thanks for having us today.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Awesome. Well, before we dive into the deep stuff, I just wanted to make sure that everyone watching knows a little bit more about you guys. So Jessica, if you could start us off, tell a little bit more about yourself and what you're doing at Barkley.
Yeah, so data-driven marketing is a bit of a cheap title because I feel like we use data in all of our marketing now. So I guess I'm just in charge of everything. What we mean by data-driven marketing, where it sort of evolved, was actually out of CRM or ECRM marketing. I'm a gal with email in my background, and it's still my first love. And what we realized we can do with an email address, especially as we get into a privacy-driven world, as we get into a targeting-driven world, where first-party data is sort of going to win the day, I got really popular. So not only do I love delivering great customer experiences and being able to tailor and personalize those experiences using customer relationship or CRM data, I also have become sort of the keeper of that identifier, that email address, which, like I said, makes me very popular at the agency. So it's been a cool role, and Barkley's really supported me with that.
That's awesome.
And I'm Jeff Fromm, Michael. I failed at Google search more than anyone you've ever interviewed. And that failure was around looking for content on millennials as consumers, which led me to call a friend of a friend at the Boston Consulting Group. We studied and published work on millennials, which led to my first book. I've now gotten the chance to write 4 books and a lot of support from the team at Barkley to study consumer trends. And I think the big 2 trends I'd point out to your audience is innovation and sustainability continue to increase in importance over the last decade. And that's my story. I'm sticking to it.
I mean, it's a great story to me. I believe it.
It's true.
And well, I guess that's actually a good point. You're talking about different consumers, different consumer types. So I want to start off with talking to you two as consumers and ask, what is your ideal customer experience when you're looking at a brand and you're going through your buyer's journey? What do you look for most?
I think for me, the customer experience is more than just the marketing part of it. I think as marketers, we feel like we really own that whole journey. And the truth is that as consumers, we stumble through that experience, right? We ask a buddy, and marketer has no control over that, right? So especially with large considered purchases, for example, a motorhome, an RV, that experience is curated in part by how you see other people enjoying the product. And so it comes back to almost fundamentally the product is part of the experience, and part of the marketing in that case. So I love a good product. I love the opportunity to try a product, or hear a great thing about a product before I buy it. But I also love, and this is not just because I'm a CRM dweeb, I'm pretty sure, I also love personalized communication. I want to, if I've exchanged data in exchange for value from you, I expect you to use that data in a way that means that you're not going to sell to me anymore after I've already bought, or that means that you're going to communicate with me with the right product variation, because you should have learned that by now. So I'm a little bit, maybe I do have a higher bar because I'm a CRM marketer, but I really like my experience to be tailored to me. I like for brands to be, quote, listening to me, and for that to feel really integrated into the process and not creepy. And I think that that's a pretty tough balance, but it's something that a lot of brands do really well.
Yeah, I mean, you've seen behind the curtain, so you can know a little bit more about it when it's coming through. But even then, I think even before Iterable, I was the same way. I was like, I'd like it. I like the value of the data that I'm giving across. Jeff, what about you? Are there a couple of things that you kind of look for when you're thinking about the customer experience?
I mean, Jess did an amazing job of covering it. I would perhaps add on a personal note, I like content that engages, inspires, and informs me. And if I can get that kind of content, it can enhance the sales process.
That's great. I mean, from a content marketer, I love to hear it.
So, we're basically validating your whole job.
Yeah, I know. I'm glad that I have a future.
That's right. That's right. And everybody listening to this, it's good news, guys. It's really good news.
Well, actually, speaking of future, so with the changes the past year, everything's changed.
Mhm.
But moving forward, what do you think are some big opportunities for brands to really kind of touch on those notes that you're talking about?
I'll go first on this one too, just because I think that one of the biggest transformations has been in data capture and digitization. I think, well, perfect example. We have a client that has a high-end, experience-driven restaurant product, Fogo de Show. I don't think it's a secret that we work with Fogo de Show, but suddenly they have no product. They have a lot of raw meat and a really strong brand, but you can't come in and experience the gauchos. You can't come in and experience the market table. I mean, everything sort of went away that made them unique. And so they leaned all the way in. I mean, it was so fun to work with them on this because in the last year, they've managed to go not only to sell delivery and pickup online, they became a butcher shop. They started selling these expert cuts of meat when meat was hard to get. I mean, just really leaning into who you are and what you do well and not thinking of it in terms of, no, this is our thing. We only deliver this thing. Why wouldn't we just close our doors until we can deliver that experience again? And I think that's something that has been really pervasive, frankly, in the marketplace. I think that brands that are doing really well coming out of a pandemic are brands that thought, what at the core is true about our brand? Not what is our typical experience? What are we able to make money on? That type of thing. It was more what do we uniquely provide? And I think that that's where brands have really won, thinking about not just how to sell online, but how do you deliver a different experience? And they actually also added a component where not only would they sell you the meat, they had how-to videos from their head chef, their head gaucho, that would tell you how to prepare the meat the same way that they would prepare them. And
That's
it
really
just was,
cool.
it was delivering that experience at home. It was very tough to do, but they did a great job.
Yeah, that's really cool. Like leaning into your strength and what you have at the core. And that actually it brings up something that Barkley has talked about, and Jeff, I'll tailor this to you. The concept of a whole brand. Barkley is talking about a whole brand. Can you kind of share a little bit more for our audience what that is?
Sure. Thanks for asking. I think the idea of whole brand came through work done by a team led by Tim Gallis at Barkley. And the thinking was that first, does brand matter? And unequivocally, it does. Now, you might think I'm biased. I work at an ad agency. We're the largest certified B Corp. But the truth of the matter is we actually looked at public company stock performance. And we found that strong brands, whole brands, were preferred by consumers and had a price elasticity and frequency of use advantage. Weaker brands often face more direct and indirect competition. They get traded away and then they struggle. And so the concept of whole brand is one where everything the business does is thought of as part of the brand, from the sustainability strategy to the internal culture to the products to the experience you asked about before to the advertising and content marketing and things that would be more downstream outside the brand. And whole brands really do a good job of thinking inside to win outside. And so when we looked at all the brands that we consider whole brands, we did two pieces of work. One, we looked at what consumers expressed through consumer research, and then we looked at that public company data. And unmistakably, these whole brands, these brands that you can think of like Chipotle or Starbucks or quite a few others, Nike, Patagonia, they have brand preference, and that is because they are whole brands.
In your research, did you find that there are certain steps that were in common or a common themes across these brands? Like if someone were to try to look at their own brand and be like, I want to be a whole brand, are there any first steps that you think fit that?
Yeah, I think, Tim's book, Scratch, goes through that in detail. I'll give you a high view that, these companies start with an inside view and they think about their culture, their people, how they treat the planet, how they treat their people, how they add value to the communities they serve. They're sustainable. They design products from scratch that are more interesting, more relevant, more empathetic to begin with, right? So a customer experience that's more empathetic is a winning customer experience to start with. And then they activate through brand action. They use their brand as a verb. And at a high level, I think the strongest brands understand we live in a society where if I use the term government, not too many people go to the word collaboration. And if I use the term organized religion, not too many people go to the word innovation. And what they're looking for in society, so many people, is brands with values, because we're not getting leadership, regardless of your political view or your religious affiliation, from the historic institutions that address societal challenges. And so now whole brands are stepping into this fray and saying, look to us for leadership.
Interesting. And I'm glad you bring up values, and you mentioned you're a B Corp. How do you think this impacts the interaction with consumers?
So I don't think consumers are reading ESG reports on environmental, social, and governance, going through the grocery store, calculating a price per ounce for this ice cream, a flavor score for the ice cream, an ESG score, doing a weighted average analysis, and then picking an ice cream. And by the way, Ben & Jerry's is a social justice brand that happens to make ice cream. HaagenDazs has the same ingredients, the same access to the same cows. The difference is the emotional connection consumers have. Otherwise, I don't imagine that there's anything that Ben & Jerry has. Not that I don't love my Cherry Garcia, that HaagenDazs doesn't make just as well. Mm-hmm. So what I do think is, when things are close, when you have two brands that are roughly equal in quality, and don't get me wrong, if you focus only on sustainability, you'll fail. So if your quality is roughly equal, your price is roughly equal, then you have values. And that's the tipping point factor that becomes so important in a world where oftentimes that is the only difference. Because I think HaagenDazs is an amazing brand too. The difference between the two brands isn't the price of either. They're both a little bit expensive and worth it. And it's not in any proprietary cherries that one party has and the other party doesn't. It's values. And more consumers and employees, both B2B and B2C, make choices on values.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great point you bring up. I like that connection between Ben & Jerry's and HaagenDazs. And so if you were, as an agency, and I can take this over to Jessica, as brands are becoming more mission driven, where I guess that I can bring it back to the whole brand. Where do you begin? Like, what are some of the steps that you, as an agency, you're looking at maybe the data and saying, like, here's how engagement changes when you are mission driven and you're driven by your values. So I guess could you talk a little bit more about, like, the impact that actually has, maybe from the data side, if you have that?
Yeah, or again, I think of this as me being kind of the popular kid in the lunchroom a little bit, but I also have access to our consumers, right? I have access to voice of consumer, and I can understand what is important to them with a survey. I mean, it's not even like a complicated advanced tool. It's like I can actually just ask what people value or what they're spending their money on, or I can listen to their actions, and that's where data kind of comes in a little bit less overtly, but figuring out what's working in our messaging, or figuring out where our consumers are spending the rest of their time when they're not with us. That's all data, that's all trackable, especially with that consistent identifier of email address or a cookie-based system with permission. We start to understand what's important to our majority, to our tribe. You know, like, I think Ben & Jerry's is a great example. Ben & Jerry's has a tribe, and I am super in the tribe, by the way, from a flavor standpoint, from a product standpoint, but also because I like a brand that's willing to plant their feet and say, this is who we are. And I think for Barkley, that whole brand spectrum almost was an idea before its time was ready. Like, we were talking about this long before it became a take a stand definition. It really is be who you are all the way to the core. You know, we talk a lot as an agency about what the advertising or the activation looks like. And what we started doing was actually auditing internal culture, auditing how empowered your employees are to make a better customer experience. If your employees are not empowered to fix an issue, then we can put a lot of marketing in the marketplace. But somebody's going to have a disappointing experience because you haven't structured your company, you haven't empowered your employees to really deliver on that customer experience as if it were their company. So we have an entire division at Barkley that's specifically around doing culture studies and helping people sort of roll out brands internally before they roll out externally. And I think that's a really important step in the process. So not only using data to listen, but also using that database to roll it out first to your internal audiences and then to your hand raiser audiences. And then, eventually the public gets to see it.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds almost like you're saying that personalization should go beyond just personalizing for the customer, but personalizing based on what your brand is saying and what your brand is doing, and what your employees are doing. Like, bring the people behind the scenes to the forefront and let them be part of the personalization journey.
That's exactly right. And I think, voice of customer was a really fad phrase for a hot second, but it's such a true representation of what we can do with data if we're responsible about it. So to your point, not just using personalization like hi, first name, and an email, actually becoming who we are as a brand, who we're for and who we're not for, and making that decision, sticking your feet in the ground, sticking your flag in the ground and saying, this is who we are and who we're not. And that level of personalization or humanization maybe of a brand, that's what Barkley really believes a brand is.
That's awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, that's all the questions I got for you guys. This was a fantastic conversation.
Thank you so much for having us.
Of course.
Hopefully you'll invite us back sometime.
Yeah, I think this is
with or without ice cream in tow,
I was going to say, if we talk about food the whole time, are you ever going to have us back before a lunch hour?
Well, maybe we'll just do it over a meal next time. Maybe by then it'll be open. Grab a pint of ice cream and just hang out. I think that's great. I think we're only touching the tip of the iceberg on this stuff, and so we'll definitely have you guys back. If there are any questions that people have, is there any way that they can reach out to find either you or Barkley?
Yeah, I would say Jeff's smart. He's got his email address right there on his nameplate, but Fromm with 2 M's at barkleys.com, or I'm JBest. Or you can find both of us on Twitter. Mine's a little bit funky. Mine's Best of Jess, which is a little bit fun, but reach out on LinkedIn or Twitter, or stalk us an email, or reach out to Iterable and they know how to get a hold of us. We're happy to talk about this stuff. It's a really cool space to be in. And I think in the last year, brands that reemerge from the pandemic, especially brands that are standing for something, are going to see a pretty big upswing. So it's a fun time to be talking about things like purpose and sustainability.
Yeah, and I would say my email, jfromm@barkleys.com, right there, and Jeff Fromm is my LinkedIn. I grabbed it when LinkedIn first started, so it's easy to find me.
Awesome. Well, I'll put some of those links in the bio and the description below as well, and we'll make sure that everyone is available for a chat. So again, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And that's all we got. So thanks so much. And we'll catch you next time on Dream It, Build It, Make It.